Okay, so this is the next episode in my podcast and third book in the series Life Beyond Silence, All Apologies, Guilt and Blame. I I guess I left off when I had gotten to Germany with my third husband and had my third daughter. And I guess you would say, for one, I truly loved Germany. I thought it was a fantastic experience. And even though me and my third husband fell apart, I I truly enjoyed the whole experience. And I had my oldest two daughters with me, and then my third daughter was born in Germany. And by the time we left, the wall had come down. But I'm getting a little fast on the story, um, which it is in the first book and in the second book, and it's in my previous podcasts. But um, once my girlfriend had left, it became more evident that my third husband and me were, I guess you would say, not clicking. It was, he was very despondent, um, and there was also issues with, I guess you would say, sexual dysfunction. He was doing things I didn't know about, which are all in the previous podcast. But anyway, I eventually, we eventually started going out at different times without each other. And I met my fourth husband, and I met him at a bar in Germany. And I should have seen the red flags, and it was basically, I guess I, again, was just looking for affection and love in all the wrong places. Basically, especially in this book, I try to tell people that, my whole life, I've made a ton of mistakes. Like, literally my whole life. From my teen years, through my failed marriages, everyone, every which way has seemed like a horrible mistake. But I also, with my guilt and my blame, I acknowledge the fact that you can't go back. You can't go back. You can't change things. If you did, things would be different. And I love my children, all of my children. And I wouldn't want to change that. I have beautiful grandchildren. And I have one by my oldest. I have two by my middle daughter. And I have two by my youngest daughter, and my son doesn't have kids as of yet. But I met a real charmer in Germany, um, Phil was I I don't know how to say it other than he was um, a real good looking, charming man who did have red flags, and I was taken with him. He was, I guess, for all uh, purposes, taken with me. We met each other. We went out. We had a lot of good times. And I split from my third husband, which if I could go back, I shouldn't have done that. But if I could go back, I wouldn't have had my third son, or my third, let me get this right. I wouldn't have had my fourth child, which is my first son and my only son. And I would never take that back. But the fact remains, I did get with him. The wall came down. I got my orders to go home. I left in, I'm thinking, January of 1990, and I was pregnant. And Phil soon followed afterwards. I know he got there pretty much just weeks after I did. But in a way, I wish he didn't have to come. If he had gone in another direction, I wouldn't have even known where he went. And of course, that was a fear of mine, but it's the truth. If he had just decided not to come to me, I wouldn't have even known where he went. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't have looked for him. But he did come, and we had a son, and our life began right back where I had always seemed to start over, which was in my hometown. We moved to the area where my first husband was. And to be honest, looking back, I remember thinking it would be a good area to move to. He would be able to see his daughter, and no matter what the bad blood was between me and my first husband, it had been years. And I thought it would be the right thing to do. Plus, it was a good area for me to get a job and a good area for us to live. I knew the area. And sure enough, we settled in, and for what started to be a decent life. Yes. Did we live paycheck to paycheck? Of course we did. We were mostly living off of my income. There was child support that was coming in from my third daughter and my first daughter. And we did. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Phil wanted to go into medical because he was a medic in the military, and he would have been great at it, but it didn't register with the medical community, I guess you would say, healthcare in general. So he decided to go into trucking. That didn't really work out when it came to cross country, but he did get a job working at a um, grocery delivery, uh, vegetables mostly, vegetables and fruit, um, mostly, and he did that locally. And I get it. He was young. This was his first child. Um, However, there was another child that he had left in Germany. And that's a long story. But if you want to hear it, it's in the first book, first podcast. It's actually in the second podcast, too. Anyway, we managed for the first year, second year. Desert Storm happened and he was overly excited. I think he felt in some way we could get back in the military. He would be able to go and do what he was trained for and hopefully stay in, because that was the kind of life he gravitated to. But Desert Storm went really well, and it was over in a flash. And even though I was happy to see him come home, and of course he was fine with coming home because of his baby, I would say he wasn't exceptionally happy, because he did tell me that he tried every which way to stay, but they didn't want him to stay, or need him to stay, I should say. So, I don't know how to describe what happened in late or early, I guess, fall of 1992. I don't know when it started. I don't know why it began. There's lots of questions that I will never get answered. I have actually lots of questions about several things in my life that I will never get answered. I get that I am guilty and am to blame for all the mistakes I made in my life. But do I know why things happened in a lot of instances? No, I do not. I do not know. You know, I don't know the actual reasons why my mom and dad divorced. Not that it's any of my business, I would say, but I don't. I don't know why my first husband, Matt, was despondent, other than he was an alcoholic. I don't know why he switched a light off when it came to me. I don't know. I don't know why my second husband, which I loved and I know loved me, I don't know why he was so addicted and such an alcoholic that he beat me and couldn't stop hurting me. I don't even know why, even though we still speak to this day, I don't even know why my third husband became despondent or looked for sex elsewhere or did what he did to destroy our marriage. I couldn't even tell you why that happened. Yes, did I do things that ended up terminating our marriage? Absolutely. I wanted a divorce. I found somebody else. And wham bam, it was over. But looking back, there would still be answers I would like to have as to why he sexually did the things he did and why he thought that was okay and why he insisted on us going out separately because some friend of his was doing that and he was saying that that would help our marriage when I said, no, I'm pretty sure it won't. I don't know why for a lot of things. But the main I don't know why comes with my fourth husband, Phil. And why on earth he would do what he did in the fall of 92. Now, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to talk about it, but I'll probably have to end up stopping in this episode to move on to the next one. But I will say, before I get started, that I think from the minute Phil ended up truck driving, that he regretted me having a baby, being with me, having so many children that he was responsible for, even though they weren't his, and having bills and a life that wasn't the life that he had loved, which was being out at bars, being the center of attention, having a fun life, which is what he had in the military. And I would say a lot of that played into what happened with him. But I don't know the reasons. He never explained the reasons or what was behind it. So basically all he did explain was in the fall of 92, I got a phone call that he was at the jail or at the police station, and that he had been, the person on the other end had just said that he had been arrested and that he would explain that he was being let go on his own recognizance. And would explain if I could come pick him up, the situation. And I said, well, can you tell me something? And he said, well, he had a weapon in his car, or was arrested for having a weapon in his car. And I was like, that makes no sense, because I knew we didn't, at least to my knowledge, own a gun. And I was thinking, well, he uses that for fishing. Maybe they were talking about some kind of fillet knife that he had. And I was like, I don't understand, you know, like, what the hell? And I went to pick him up, and we got back home, and I was just waiting for answers. And he said, look, you're gonna be upset. And I was like, well, tell me. Yeah, I'm gonna be upset, but tell me. I'm like dying here. Tell me. And he started to explain that he had been arrested in the Kmart parking lot because he had gone there after work, and he said, I was stupid, I bought uh, I think he said Penthouse or Hustler magazine, and he said, me and you haven't been doing it enough. And he said, I just felt like the urge, and so I masturbated in the car, and someone saw me, and they reported it, and I had gone in to buy some jeans, and when I came out, the police were there, and they took me into custody for public indecency or whatever. Now, that whole story sounds bizarre in itself, but the way he's portrayed it in that story is just absurd to me, because there was a lot more to it. I remember my mouth was just open, and I just I couldn't cry, I couldn't speak. I was just looking at him like, what the fuck? And in my head I was thinking, who does that? I mean, I guess people do that, but why would you do that? Like, what? And I think the more why would you do that is, why would you go in and get a pair of jeans after masturbating and getting seen by somebody? Why would you go in and buy that and give yourself time to be arrested? Like, I don't understand at all. And I still don't understand. But in my head, I was trying to reason it. Like, I knew he had fantasies of being caught having sex, and voyeurism fantasies, I guess you would say. So in my head, I was thinking, okay, so let's break this down. He got a magazine. He was masturbating in the vehicle. He probably wanted somebody to see them. And he got seen. And of course, anybody that gets seen masturbating, people are going to say, oh my God, that's a predator. That's somebody that a kid could see. And they're going to go report it. I would do the same thing. I probably would be pissed off and walk up to the window of the person and beat on their car window and say, what the fuck are you doing? Somebody could see you. And then I would report them right there in front of them. Of course, back then cell phones weren't like available, but I still would have been like, I don't know, screaming it to the top of my lungs and laughing at that person and saying, you're an idiot, because I'm going to call the law and you're going to go to jail. But that woman probably was scared to death, and she probably ran to the nearest phone and called and reported it. And like I said, for whatever reason, supposedly Phil went in to the Kmart, and then, and maybe he did that, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe he did that because he was thinking that that would somehow give him a purpose for even being in the Kmart parking lot if he had purchased something. I just now thought of that. To be honest, I hadn't even thought of that before right this second, but maybe he did. But anyway, he was arrested when he came back to the car, which unfortunately, God rest her soul, was my grandmother's car that she had given us because we needed two vehicles because I worked and he worked. So she had given us her car, and there my stupid fourth husband had done something unthinkable. And I remember being broken by what he had told me. I was completely upset. But I couldn't cry, I couldn't speak. And I remember him asking me if I was okay, and I was like, no, I'm not. And all I could think about was how to best get out of this situation. What was going to happen to him if he went to jail? That meant a loss of income to our family, and how were we going to pay our bills? What were we going to do? How would I explain this? What if my first husband found out about this, which he probably would? How was this going to go down? A lot of questions and thoughts flooded my head. I was probably in shock, to be honest. I know at the time I had been working on my first book, and I know I was thinking in my head, my life is shit. It's always been shit. It's always gonna be shit. My whole life has been full of so many mistakes. And now the person that I loved, that I thought was my soulmate, I guess you would say, has done pretty much on path with everybody else. He's done something that you can't undo. And there's going to be repercussions from what he's done. I just didn't know how bad at that moment. I didn't know a lot. I did know that the lawyers that I talked to said, you know, if he had done this in a big city, it could have been easier to get out of. But because this is a small country town, or small city, I guess you would say, in Kentucky, this is going to be bad because it makes him look like a predator. It's probably going to be in the paper. It's probably going to make the news, and he's probably going to get a name. Maybe even like the, the sexual predator list. He's gonna, I don't think that's what it's called, but he's gonna get slammed by the judge on this instance. And I was just speechless. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here for right now. I know the rest of it I will put in the next episode. But I do want to say, All Apologies, Guilt, and Blame is my third podcast and my third book in the series Life Beyond Silence. My first book was titled Not a Victim, a Survivor, Life Beyond Domestic Violence and Rape. My second was Losing Touch with Reality. All three podcasts are available on YouTube, and the books in ebook form and paperback. The first one I know is for sure on Amazon. The second and the third will be. I've just never taken the time to load them in. But they're all they should also be at Barnes and Nobles and other avenues of getting them. But I'm going to leave it here for right now, and I'll be back. Thank you very much for listening, and I truly appreciate it. Any comments or questions, I will do my best to answer. Just leave them below. Thank you very much.